and welcome to IMI Insights, the podcast where we are in conversation with our faculty to discuss and explore emerging business ideas and trends. Recently, we've all heard about the news or read about it that there was an engineer who was doing multiple full time roles. And while some sort of praised it as a hustle, a lot of people condemned it as betrayal. And this sparked a huge debate around moonlighting. Now, what exactly is moonlighting in today's work culture, and whether it's a betrayal, whether it's a hustle, is something that we're going to explore with Professor Upasana Dhanda, who is an assistant professor of OB and HR at IMI. Hello, Professor, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Farhana. Thank you for having me.
So, to begin with, we want to understand what exactly is moonlighting in today's work culture and how does it differ from, let's say, gigs that one might do?
Okay. So, Farhana, in the traditional sense, in the classical sense, I would say, moonlighting was taking another job over and above the primary employment that you were doing, often in the evenings. So, the metaphor comes in by the moonlight.
Yeah.
And the primary reason for moonlighting was financial necessity or just an additional income. But in the 21st century, with the digital ecosystem that we have now, with virtual workplaces, remote work, boundaryless career, and a lot of freelancing opportunities and gig based apps, moonlighting is on the rise. And this term has actually dramatically changed now because it's still holding multiple jobs, doing second job over and above your primary job, especially in those work hours. But the difference now lies in terms of the scalability, the visibility, and I would say the risk that is involved. So earlier, if an engineer is coming back home from work and maybe teaching yoga, which is out of passion or an additional income, right? That would not breach corporate confidentiality. But today, if the same engineer, if he or she is coming back home or just virtually working and taking up multiple roles, full time roles in rival firms, it's risking trust, attracting a lot of legal and IP issues, right? So I would say that traditionally, with moonlighting or holding multiple jobs, that was a private, I would say, survival tactic. But today, it is caught public attention because it has become an ethical dilemma. And whether it is consulting, coding, doing your entrepreneurial venture, working on some side project, everything is counted as moonlighting.
So, the Sonam Parekh case, if we actually just look at that, why do you think that sort of sparks such a huge debate and talk around moonlighting?
Yeah, so Soham Parekh case caught attention in July 2025 when this guy was holding multiple jobs, full-time roles,
yes.
in a lot of IT startups, and he was clocking in 100 plus work hours. So some called it hustle, really appreciated the guy on social media coming from Gen Z specifically. But then a lot of them said that this is madness. Humanly, it's not possible. And the companies had a very strong viewpoint on it. Some called it unethical, and some even said that this is plain cheating. So the conversations, the debate started around productivity issues, burnout, employees' mental health, physical health is at stake. And most importantly, if we look at it from a organizational perspective, then there is a breach of trust, right? Confidentiality issues might arise, legal issues, and of course, intellectual property is at risk. So I would say that the conversations and the debate, because of the Soham Parekh case, is around, first and foremost, it is around this visibility, right? Which is this debate on social media. That is it a hustle? Are we encouraging it, especially when the workplace norms are changing? We are having remote work, virtual workplaces. Or is it something which can truly have effects on productivity and burnout, right? So one is that. Second is that there's a clash. The clash is between the control structures that the organizations want. And on the other hand, what they want is they want to embrace these new workers' aspirations. So when Gen Z is joining the workforce, they come up with different aspirations. So do we embrace it, or do we still have very control structures right? That is again to be debated. And third is that with the changing things after pandemic,
Yes.
the main thing is that if an employee is working hard, ticking all the boxes with respect to productivity and performance in the virtual setup, do we still have control over his or her remaining work hours? So that is again questionable. So that's why I think the debate has started, and it has become a boardroom priority
Yeah.
for a lot of organizations.
So,
Yeah.
when you talk about organizations, we've seen a lot of these big IT companies like Wipro and others, Infosys, who've actually condemned this and they've said moonlighting is not something that we would encourage. On the
Yeah.
other hand, startups seem to be more open to this whole moonlighting idea.
Yeah.
So, what does this say about the work culture and priorities of organizations versus startups?
So for Hana, there was a conclave which had founders of the startups
Mm-hmm.
and the representatives of the big IT giants. And there was a discussion happening around
Yeah.
moonlighting. So these companies, please understand this. I think you'll understand it much better. All these IT giants, Wipro,
Mm-hmm.
TCS, Infosys, they outsource contracts for global clients.
Right.
And for them, what is important? One is consistent delivery, and the other is
Mm-hmm.
confidentiality. So, for them, with moonlighting, allowing moonlighting, all of this is at stake. There is a lot of risk involved
Right.
because if they allow their employees to moonlight, especially with the virtual workplaces
Mm-hmm.
coming in, it's very difficult to have that control. So, again, confidentiality and legality, there is a breach of trust that can happen. But for the IT startups,
Startups.
right, in that panel discussion also, the founders, they were very pro and they were very enthusiastic about moonlighting. Because if an engineer from this big IT giant, he or she wants to moonlight and take up a short project with a startup because
Mm-hmm.
of any motive, it could be financial, it could
Mm-hmm.
be learning something new, or just out of passion, they can have an access to this highly skilled talent without any exclusivity, right? So they can hire them without having to think how will we pay them those handsome packages
Mm-hmm.
which the big IT firms can afford. So they are very enthusiastic, and I think they are at the winning end. So that's why there is a cultural divide between the IT giants and the IT startups. So
Yeah.
yes.
So one is like getting access to a lot of talent easily, and the other one's trying to protect what they're already building in their bigger companies and all of
Right.
these things, right?
And then, of course, the productivity also dips in their view,
Yeah.
and there could be employee burnout.
Mm-hmm.
So they are talking about employee well-being and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, if they see that employee is clocking in,
100
so many
hours.
hours, 100
Yes.
hours, of course, then how do we control that?
Right.
Yeah.
So, let's take a step back from organizations and the bigger companies and look at the employees side of it. So, what are some of the things that might entice them to take up moonlighting or these extra gigs that they do?
Right. So traditionally, of course, as I said, that earning extra money was one of the motives.
Mm-hmm.
But today it has changed. So money still remains a major factor because of the economic factors that are prevailing, especially in India and globe. So I would say that moonlighting is an interplay because of the economic
Mm-hmm.
factors as well as the personal factors. So skill development is one of the reasons. If you're working in IT, right, and you want to work on a particular technology or take up a project, it might not always be possible that you get an opportunity in the big companies. But with moonlighting, what you can do is you can take up a side project and work on that idea or technology.
Right.
So a lot of people do it for skill development
Mm-hmm.
as well. Then the other reason could be an identity and passion. People are working, in the evenings, and they don't see moon as the end of the day. They actually see it as the beginning of something new
Yeah.
because they're passionate about building something of their own. So they're working on side gigs or taking up
Mm.
entrepreneurial ventures. So this is one reason. Purpose. You see, Gen Z, they're all about meaningfulness of work
Yeah.
and purpose. So maybe if they're not aligning with the organization goals, but they have to do it because they want to
Mm.
earn money,
Mm.
this kind of passion purpose they find in the side gigs or some other job. And another reason I think is also this fallback option, right?
Right.
That's job security is nowhere there. We
Yes,
read
with
so
the
many
layoffs and
articles
everything.
that the
Yeah.
layoffs are happening. So for them, this job security that they want to keep this moonlighting going. And I think this is also one of the reasons that people want to take up additional roles and have multiple professional identities, right? So I think these are some of the top reasons
Mhm.
for doing moonlighting. And I think all of them are somewhere helping the employees in one or the other way, because
Yes.
nobody would like to work so much, right,
Without getting something
without
in
getting
return.
something which
Yeah.
is beneficial for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So, of course, this is the employee side of it. But again, when we look back at the companies, there are, they've mentioned there's a lot of risk
Yeah.
and cultural factors that could also come in of how, the company culture and all of that.
Yeah.
So, apart from confidentiality, is there anything else that, the companies see as a risk when their employees are moonlighting?
So for Hana, you see that there has been a 32% increase
Mhm.
in moonlighting, and there are more than 3,000 cases that have got public
And
attention
when has this increase been since?
since the last year.
Okay, okay.
So more, and these are things that have come out in public.
Mm.
So you see that more and more people are doing it.
Right.
And it could be multiple reasons. So organizations are concerned about that productivity dip. So humanly, can you work more than 40, 50 hours a week?
Mhm.
Probably no. But if
Mhm.
people are doing it, somewhere that productivity issue is going to come.
Yeah.
They are maybe straining themselves so much, and ultimately it's not beneficial for the organization or themselves, right? So companies are not just confidentiality, IP, legal, but they're also concerned about those productivity. So what you're doing is you're taking out hours from your primary job only. That is what the concern is. So
Yes.
if we talk about the case of Soham Parekh, if he's working 100 plus hours, probably he has given that projects to some other people who are working under him, because working on multiple jobs is not possible, or you're taking out hours from your primary
Mm.
job. So that is, I think, the major concern that companies have.
So, of course, globally also there's this phenomenon of moonlighting in the US and UK, and they have certain policies, certain ways of sort of accepting it or not, or dealing with it
Yeah.
at best. So, what are some of these things that India could look at adopting?
So if you talk about the global norms, in US there is employment at will.
Mhm.
So people can take up multiple jobs, but what is needed is disclosure. And the working hours also have to be set so that there's no overlap of you working in the same, on different jobs in the same organization. So that's not allowed. But you can take up multiple jobs. Even in UK, Germany, you can take a second employment, but again, you have to disclose it, and you have to make sure that you're abiding by the legalities and the confidentiality
Mhm.
issues, right? But in India, we see that all the the legal issues, they're very employee friendly.
Okay.
So they're bound by the work contracts.
Mhm.
So organizations say that you cannot take up another role or you need to disclose it. But we still see, as I said, the cases are
It
rising,
is.
because still now in organizations in India, they have not taken a clear stand
Mhm.
that whether it is allowed, conditionally allowed, or it is strictly prohibited. So when they find it out, what they do is fire employees, right? And it's possible because they're working virtually. There is less peer
Yes.
interaction, boundaryless organizations. So when it comes to light, they take very strict actions. So I think we have to make sure that some kind of framework is there
Mhm.
which allows ethical moonlighting, or if you're completely against it as a organization because your culture, your value system doesn't allow it, then be clear so that employees know what is allowed and what is not.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you've been talking about the rise of moonlighting, especially since the last year. And you also mentioned in the article very clearly the Gen Z clearly wants to do moonlighting and they're for it.
Yeah.
So now how do companies sort of make sure that Gen Z feels welcome in the workplace where they want to do moonlighting and all of these things, but also then protect company work hours and company laws and such?
Yeah, so Gen Z, they are the digital natives and they want to embrace this moonlighting
Yes.
trend because, as I said, passion drives them more than the
Hmm.
financial rewards. Of course, they want job security as well. But if you look at the characteristics of Gen Z, they're multitaskers, and they're driven by passion, right? And all of this is the digital natives. So working in virtual organizations, and seen it all, the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So when they join the workforce, they're accustomed to working like that. And they always believe in the hustle culture also,
Yes.
right? So I think if organizations want to capitalize on the skill set of Gen Z, they need to embrace moonlighting, because they are the ones who are going to push it. Otherwise, you lose skilled talent, to competitors who are doing it. So it is here to say for the Gen Zs, of course. And a lot of surveys have said that Gen Z, they want to do moonlighting. They want to take up multiple roles, and especially entrepreneurial ventures.
Right.
So they're doing a job, but
They'll also do
they're
a side
also
hustle.
doing side hustle, maybe content creation,
Right.
and earning money out of it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're making some startup, doing something of their own, but they are definitely doing it. And I think one of my previous organization student also, after he graduated, he told me that during pandemic, peak COVID, he took up 3 roles, and he was able to do
Was
it.
it like 3 full-time
Three
roles?
full-time roles, because he was working around the clock. Whole day he was working. So he was able to clock in so much hours, and he was able to manage 3 jobs. So I think that time nobody thought that moonlighting could be so
Yeah.
detrimental. But of course, the burnout
In the long
came
run,
in.
I think the burnout
Yeah.
is seen.
Yes.
So, you say if Gen Z is embracing it, and they are, of course, the next sort of set of people who are going to go into the workforce
Yeah.
and who are already there. So, can we look at there being then a policy which sort of balances this flexibility as well as protects the company?
Of course. I mean, organizations have to first be very clear with what their stand is.
Mhm.
Are they allowing it,
Right.
conditionally allowing, or are they just against it? So that has to be clearly mentioned and communicated to the employees. Then comes, of course, it comes from what kind of culture they want to embrace. Is it more controlled, or is it trusting their employees? Is it culture and control first, or is it trust first? So they need to see that. Of course, create a policy around it. What needs to be disclosed, what needs to be put in their work contracts, so that employees know that, okay, if I'm probably teaching yoga on weekends or during the day somewhere, I can clock in that those 1 or 2 hours, and for an additional income or just for passion's sake, is it allowed in my current organization or not? So I think that needs to be very well defined by the organizations if they want to embrace moonlighting and have a win-win situation.
So, of course, policies and framework is one thing that needs to be in place.
Yeah.
But we've also seen that work culture doesn't really thrive on policies alone. You have to foster trust. There has to be this sort of accountability factor that the employees must also have, and the company should also have trust. So, what will be some of these things that workplaces will have to sort of introduce apart from policies?
So I think trust is very important. And with trust and employee freedom, individual freedom, comes a lot of responsibility and accountability. So if that ethical moonlighting that we call is allowed by the organization, as employees, you need to embrace that, and you need to abide by what you have to disclose, and what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Right.
And you need to be accountable and responsible. So your performance, productivity, all of that has to be top notch if you are taking a side hustle or taking another role. So that needs to be done. Organizations have to build that trust. They have to give them opportunities, maybe internal side gigs.
Right.
Why not? And I think that's the future. Take up a side project in another team if you want. Earn additionally.
Which I think we also see, given that so many, you're talking about content creators.
Yeah.
They definitely don't always have to be a part of the branding or the marketing team. They can be in a different team, but still sort of create content for the company.
So take up internal gigs within the organization. And I think entrepreneurial culture, very important, which we call intrapreneurship or corporate
Right.
entrepreneurship, building that sort of culture so that the problems which comes because of lack of passion, meaningfulness, and
Mhm.
purpose can be solved with that. It's a long way to go,
Yeah.
but I think companies are trying to understand that and they want to embrace it.
Yes. So my next question was going to be whether do you think that moonlighting is here to stay? But I
Yeah.
think from the conversation we've had, it's pretty clear that it is.
Yeah,
So
it's not a passing
yeah.
trend in my understanding. It's here to stay. But organizations, as I said, they are the ones who have to take a very clear stand on it. And I think they need to embrace it. Otherwise, any competitor who's doing it, they lose out talent,
Mhm.
right? Or they'll see cases coming up where some or the other is moonlighting and they have to be very strict with them, take a strict action. So I think it's here to stay, definitely. I would say institutionalize it responsibly. If you're able to do it, it will be a win win situation for the employer as well as the employee. So, yeah.
So that balance is
So,
important.
balance is important.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much. This has been a very interesting conversation about moonlighting and the fact that it is here to stay and what employees and companies can do to sort of make it a balanced situation for both.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.